grounds is a transformative grounds. I see it as one, and I hope you all go away with something of a new learning. I'm going to spend the first 5 minutes setting the stage, and then I'm going to join you in the audience and turn it over to Catherine and Sharon, who really are the masterminds and the maestros of the Storylines project. My disclosure is stated. However, I do want to tell you I grew up in Napanee, Ontario, Southern Ontario, in Mohawk territory. I grew up, my father, before he was married, before the war, worked for the Hudson's Bay Company and was a fur trader in northern Saskatchewan, Norway House, Manitoba, and Big Trout Lake, Ontario. This is me in 1974 in Moose Factory with a fellow who was an incredible artist who made tamarack geese. I forgot to bring it to show you my tamarack goose that I still have that Johnny Blue Boy made. It was my first as a medical student understanding and learning the ways of the people of the North. Oops, sorry. I then also went up the coast to Attawapiskat. Many of you heard some of the challenges in Attawapiskat during the I Know More movement and Teresa Spence. I met my husband in Attawapiskat. It's very close to the community. It hasn't changed at all since 1974. When I moved here in 78, I had the privilege to be working more and more closely with people from the First Nations community. And this is why. We started seeing children with type 2 diabetes in the late 80s, and we have more type 2 diabetes in children than anywhere else in Canada. And if you take off the Northwestern Ontario children and we see, whoops, you do that, and add it to us, you can see that this is a very rare problem outside of Manitoba. We have a responsibility to understand all aspects of why we have so much type 2 diabetes, and it is 95% First Nation involved, the children who have the type 2 diabetes. And this is the history since 1986. And in the first few years, there were too few children for us to make any conclusions about why or what was going on. And now we have a large enough cohort, more than type 1 diabetes, to be able to start asking some really important questions. We're grateful to MICH to fund the DREAM team as part of its one of its programs. When we did the study that I showed you in 2004-2006, we also recognized that treatment of type 2 diabetes in children across Canada with very small numbers was all over the map. And you can see that in Manitoba, we focused a lot on lifestyle only. However, we've learned with Alison Dart's and our Deep Dream team's work that these children are doing very poorly. This is Complication Free Survival. The black is children with type 1 diabetes, the red is children with type 2 diabetes. 75% of them have had a significant end organ complication by 20 years of diabetes. Since the average age is now somewhere between 10 and 12 years of age, we're talking children in their reproductive age group. And this is survival. Children are dying of this disease, and so we know that the treatment models that we have are insufficient. We also know that our population of children, they graduate from pediatrics at age 18, have a significant frequency of admissions to psych health. A third of them have had a history with Child and Family Services, and a quarter of them have already been pregnant before they actually leave our program and go to adult health care. We in our team spend a lot of time listening, thinking, reading, watching to help us understand and learn the history of where we come from, why we're in the circumstance we are now, and we can't avoid understanding the issues related to colonization, dispossession of traditional lands, assimilation policies, residential school policies, and the Chrétien White Paper of 1969. And these historical aspects are really important to ground us, to help understand and be able to work with our the youth families and the communities. And on a daily basis, we deal with geographical issues, jurisdictional issues, care delivery issues in different parts of the province and Northwestern Ontario, food security issues, cultural issues that are important to them, and to the people and communities we work with, and post-colonial issues. One colleague of ours who works with us in partnership has said, we talk about lifestyle choices and lifestyle modification, but it's insulting to her because in fact there are no lifestyle choices in many of our communities. We also work hard to establish community partnerships. Members of the team last week were in Island Lake Tribal Council communities. But over the years, we've now been at this for 25 years, we've learned that we have so much more to learn. The traditional medical model is inappropriate and has led us to try and look at ways of addressing this, addressing our families, the children, and the communities in different and creative ways.
So my job is to stay in contact with the young adults after they graduate to adult care. And when the MICH project shifted its focus in 2010 to kind of look at transition services for type 2, it became really clear to me that they aren't really going to find those services on their own. They're not going to have parents or other caregivers who can advocate for them the same way that our type 1 patients can. So this was my sort of selfish way of trying to get to know the patients better. I really believe that the personal communication and personal relationship with the young adults are going to be what allows them to continue that connection and contact into adult care. So before I really start talking to you about storylines, because it really is still in its infancy and we're working on it, this is definitely not a completed conclusions presentation. I do want to acknowledge and thank the team that participated in the project. These are their stories we're sharing with you and how we have this perspective. I also want to give a special thank you to Diana Thornycroft. She was one of my first teachers and made me fall in love with her. And she also had a really unique job of taking a bunch of high school students and trying to make them big as artists. And so I thank her for looking at this project and giving me some great ideas and inspirations on how to address the visual arts part of the project. I'd also like to thank Dr. Barry LaValle, who's brought a very unique perspective and has been a huge supporter and a fearless advocate for me. And also to MICH, because they really did take a chance on us. They gave us a beautiful studio to use, and thank you so much. So Storylines is basically around the framework that we know that diabetes affects people physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. We spend a lot of time looking at the physical aspects of people's health in the clinic. I'm more interested in the other three. And I know that from my own experience, some people really do find that talking about their experiences or making art helps them to cope better in their daily life. We have a lot of interventions with lifestyle and diet and exercise. But what about the kids that bring their sketchbooks to the Y, carry them to clinic as security guards? I was interested in those kids. So, why art and why storytelling? We know that narrative really does bridge the connect and make connections between the listener and the teller of the story. Words have power. Hearing them, speaking them, really direct how we live our lives, improve our lives, things that block our lives. It's also very traditional, especially with this population, and it respects the autonomy of the individual. It's their personal stories, it's their awareness, and they're telling their story. It also helps to provide a deeper meaning and context to their situation. Visual arts has many ways you can approach it, and how this approach to visual arts is different than what your kid may draw you hanging on the wall or what you may see in their gallery. It's because of the particular use and purpose for how we're addressing it. And it's also very different than art therapy, because I'm not a therapist, and I was the person conducting the sessions with the young adults. So I guess my best example is a person's running for the bus. They might be late, they might be running at an 8-minute mile pace and they catch the bus. Someone else is running and training for a marathon. They're also running it at an 8-minute mile pace, but the intent and the purpose is very different. So that's kind of how this kind of intervention is used as a tool. And there's definitely healing qualities and therapeutic values also for oneself, so that you can understand how you're feeling and how you're thinking. But it also helps also provides the possibility to approach a treatment plan that's completely personal to someone. Hopefully it has value. The goal is to explore these stories as they relate to health, being healthy, coping with health challenges, and making their needs known. Our overarching goals are to communicate better between youth and our healthcare providers, to make our specific clinic more culturally safe and emotionally respectful, and also to know how to better understand and better support people when they're at home, up north, away from their clinics. So I'm going to run through this so that we can get to the good stuff. The method really was a qualitative exploratory study. The population reports is coming from Heather's clinic, Brandy and Liz's. The First Nation youth 14 to 17 with a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes and receiving their care from the RCA. Our recruitment target was 10, we currently have 12. And the recruitment strategy was completely biased and selective. So these are kids that I meet in the clinic, and I get to know them. And if they have a proclivity for or an ability for art, and we kind of get along and are interested, they select themselves. That's how it was. That's how it worked. So the approach is very flexible, and you'll see that later on as I describe how the sessions work. And we use participant interviews, which are completely personal, and guided creative art and kind of narrative therapy sessions. And also, one of the big things I wanted to do was to be able to introduce First Nations youth to contemporary First Nation artists and Manitoba. So we did do a lot of field trips to different art organizations. And we're using in vivo software for the analysis, and that is just allowing me to store all the audio files and the digital files and to be able to code and do thematic analysis on them. Sharon's got a lot of experience doing that, so we'll also discuss amongst ourselves and record all that. Typically, the initial meeting was done in the clinic. That was meeting people for their transition visits. Then we would plan another meeting at MICH so that they could get familiar with the location and the art room. And we could arrange, getting the consent signed and finding all the travel arrangements we need, bus tickets we need to be picked up, we could get there, those kinds of things. And then the first session, all the sessions were basically 90 minutes, and they were after the first session, they were completely flexible and based on these choice. So the first session was usually getting to know them. There's a bit of, I guess, the usual questions to kind of figure things out, and then a bit of an art level approach at the end. And then after that, it became very flexible. It's kind of, what do you want to do today? Talk, draw, paint. Here's a bunch of stuff. What do you want to do? So some people have gone, clear like 3 or 4 sessions. Some people are on their 12th or 14th. So really, at some point, it becomes, I don't call them for appointments. They will be in that meeting when they want to come in. So it's really flexible. We've gone on a lot of different field trips to Native Commons, Urban Shaman Gallery, which we all should check out. Creative, which is an art supply store and exchange. Ace Art Gallery, which is beside Urban. The Winnipeg Art Gallery. Plug-in, which is across from UW, has Stella's. Platform Gallery, which is a media photography-based gallery and exchange, and Martha Street, which is a printmaking studio just behind the and they have no program. So the interviews were semi-structured and based on sort of the different physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health dimensions. They were a little bit random in which order they usually chose which one they wanted to talk about. And they were meant to really probe their meanings and feelings towards their health, their personal beliefs and self-worth, their challenges, supports, and kind of people that really were providing the support for them with their diagnosis. Interaction with their healthcare system and their care providers and their personal stresses and coping strategies. All sessions are recorded and permissioned. primary participants. And writing samples. Refer to write.
I'm just going to get this in case I forget something. Thanks, Catherine. And before, I think we can press it. I want to, before I begin, I just want to thank, I really want to thank Heather and Catherine for inviting me to participate in this study. It's, the area that I work in is with diabetes and First Nations, and I work primarily, well, I guess really all with adult. And so certainly when at the site in the community, people come with their children, so there's always, there's children around, but this is very different from me. So thank you very much, because this really has been, I don't know if anyone else will be transformed by today, but I can tell you that I've been transformed by participating in this so far. And one of the reasons really is the talent of Catherine. And, I just have to, I have to, because I've had the opportunity, and none of you will get the opportunity, to listen to the transcripts, to read it very carefully, to look at the art and have Catherine talk to me about it, and look at it while I'm listening to what the children are saying. And as Catherine's talking about making this connection, I know that as I'm doing this and having done some qualitative interviews and been working primarily with Sandy Bay First Nations for 12 years, I have a connection to many people. And so, I know what it takes over time to have that level of trust. And as I'm going through this work, it's just the depth, the richness, it really is overpowering sometimes. But I know that I could never have done this. So even as, a skilled researcher, having good communication skills, absolutely not. Even just the interview, not doing the art, certainly the art. It's been really interesting working with Catherine, because sometimes we communicate and it's as though one of us is speaking Russian and the other is speaking some Mandarin or something. And I just think, are we talking about the same thing? Because I am a verbal person and words are my life. And Catherine is so visual, and so we try to, and I just thought, this is a really good example of people who are talking about the same things, reading the same thing, looking at the same thing, and we're going like this. And finally, we get a way to communicate where we're talking about the same, or we're communicating somehow about the same thing, but just that.
It's usually really fun.
Yeah, it is fun, but it's, so what, I think what I'm going to present maybe will be for people who work in this area, which is many of you. On the surface, the concept itself is something that you've probably seen before. They go, poverty, of course that has an impact, but it's their words, and I can't even, how I try to visualize it, and even with students, is when you do these qualitative things, it's like being in a room filled with 10,000 puzzle pieces, and they're all white. It's a blizzard, and somehow you have to try and create that puzzle. And right now we're at the point where we're really just trying to get air. So what I'm going to bring in is something that, as I say, might seem very, very basic to you, but you know what? This basic is fundamental. In talking to clinicians, and then in listening to these children's stories. And so I'm just going to go for a minute to something that happened to me just last year in Sandy Bay. And we were, and some of the students there, with my PhD student, and Andrea Blanchard collected data there as well. And so one of the things, we did a survey about stress, and then we had a station where we were doing some anthropometric measures. So we were behind a screen, and this one young man, and so he was in his 20s, and I remember him because I know his dad, and I know he was diagnosed with diabetes when he was about 12, type 2 diabetes. Anyway, so he's in his early 20s now. So he came and he sat down, and I was going through his forms, and going through, because we want to check, make sure we have all the information, and I see on here it goes, and I said, so I know he's 22 or something. And I said, oh, I see you have diabetes and you've had diabetes for 11 years. So meanwhile, we're having a conversation and, you know, everything is very friendly, it's really nice. And we're talking away. And I said, oh, so I see that you've had, or I said, yeah, so I know you have diabetes, so you were diagnosed then when you were 12. And I'm not exaggerating, that his face just went, you know? And then I said, and then the same thing happened with a young woman who I didn't know, but we were having this conversation, everything was fine. And I said, I see you've had diabetes for 10 years, so you were diagnosed when you were an adolescent. And the face just, it was just blank. And there was, it stopped. I just knew, I have lost this person completely. And then I said, oh, I see that you're currently not taking any medications. Do you have a doctor? Do you have someone you can talk to about your diabetes? Yeah. Okay, this is, you know, and I know from dealing with adults about what it means in people's lives to have that diabetes, but I thought, wow. And so then I said, okay, now we're going to do such and such. And within about 5 minutes, everything, that other person was back. And we were able to talk about other things, some very personal things. But I thought, this is just really, so then, you know, I talked to Barry and some different, I talked to Allison about this, and whenever I mention that, every clinician just goes, I've seen that face. And so, the way that has been interpreted, then when I talked to some adults about it, and then I talked to Catherine and Heather and different people, and well, I'm going to show you kind of this model. I'm going to start at the bottom of our model. It's about lack of engagement. So what happens is that face gets interpreted as a lack of engagement. So indicators of one of your patients not having, you know, being completely disengaged, those facial expressions, that flatness, there was just anger, it was this person was not talking to me. Body language, other indicators of not being engaged, might be not coming to clinic appointments, missing appointments, and then maybe your clinical markers that you're taking. There's no change in behaviors, no change in glucose, or things are just getting worse. Weight is going up, or no really remarkable change. It kind of gets interpreted as maybe this person just doesn't care. I'm not saying anybody here thinks that, because I think that, you know, you've all worked in it long enough, but this can be what, when messages are provided back to them, what they're telling us is that they think that you think, I don't care, or that I'm indifferent, but I really do. But how do you express that? And Catherine has provided a way that people could express this. So what she's getting is really very powerful. So sometimes we get this explanation, oh, well, it's their cultural group. It's their culture. And that really is an inefficient or insufficient explanation. And I can talk about that later if you want. But so what part of our model that I'll show you at the end is what we are finding is that these youth are feeling completely overwhelmed. And things that, and Catherine, you can come in here too, some of the themes that are coming up that they're talking about is what Catherine has called this inherent suffering. That, I'll show you this one quote, that, you know, a child diagnosed, and again, so, and you all know this, but it's a little bit new to me and to some people in the room. And so I know diabetes, what effect it has on an adult, but so this is somebody 12 years old who's diagnosed with a chronic disease, and their mother might have this, their father might have it, their grandmother does, and that person has an amputation, and that one has kidney disease, and this one. You see this all the time, but then to have the children explain, it is like this, they inherit a disease, and they inherit this suffering.
One of the girls didn't remember that she was that she had been diagnosed. She just thought she always had diabetes because she always came to the clinic appointment with her mom. It's just the time she was girls. It's like our appointments.
Mm-hmm. So another aspect that's really coming up great is this aspect of isolation. but there's this alienation too, but this isolation that the youth are feeling completely alone with their diagnosis, that there really is, they're calling out for real emotional help in dealing with this in their lives, but there isn't anywhere where they're getting it. So they feel completely alone with this very adult life. And that's another thing here that, again, probably all of you know about, but the youth are living very adult lives. Their level of responsibility and the things that they've seen and done in their lives when they're 8, 10, 12 years old is really quite remarkable. And they feel totally isolated. They have somebody who can tell them if their blood pressure is okay, if their glucose is okay, if they weigh too much, but there's nobody to help them get through all of this. We're familiar with aspects of intergenerational trauma when they talk about that. Chronic grief, we'll see, and again, it's something that you know, and maybe it becomes, we get too used to knowing, but so what is that actual impact and how is it being held in the body? And then that sense of alienation, being so different and not being respected. So what we're finding when the kids talk is that the medical system is contributing to this. So instead of being a place where this is healing, and as we're talking about this isn't about blaming anybody. You know, it's just this is what people are experiencing. But the system that we have, and Heather said, you know, our medical system isn't, you know, we're not trained, maybe we're not organized to handle what is happening to these kids. So they're actually contributing to all of this, to what's happening in their lives, and they feel it's making it worse. And this is what happens then when they get there. We see this total shutdown and this perception that there's indifference among them for their health. And what strikes me is that they're just kids. So I think two of the key findings that I thought that we could talk about a bit today was the level of responsibility and talking about awareness and fear. Because when I talk to clinicians and the youth feel like, as I said, they feel like they're being dismissed and being disrespected, and that nobody really understands what's really happening in their lives. And they live with such great responsibility in their lives, far beyond their years. And, oh, I guess, can you go back? Hit it. And another one. Oh, there we go. And then they talk about how people think that they don't understand, or because they're quiet, because they shut down, that they don't know what's going on, and that there just is great awareness and fear. So this is one of the women who just talked about this anger, just talking about having diabetes. So she said, I was so mad at my mom. We moved from a house to squeezing into a trailer house, sharing a room with other little kids. I hated that place so much. And this whisper. I don't know with diabetes. I don't know if I was active, because I used to be at her former community. She used to be really active, and at this new community, didn't do anything. So I can feel where a lot of the stuff that happened with the gaining of weight, I can probably see why I was diagnosed even. All those changes were probably not good for my body. So this one we thought, you know, on one level, on that very surface level, maybe somebody would say, oh, well, this is really good. There's an awareness of diabetes etiology, that there's inactivity, weight gain, and that's why you've got diabetes. But this is really very troubling narrative. Because this young woman is telling us about so much anger and family situations and being, yeah, and I don't know if you want to talk about that. Oh, okay. No, and then maybe taking, so in situations where children don't have a lot of control, but then there's an element of, well, if I didn't get fat, maybe I wouldn't have got diabetes. So there's some self-responsibility being placed on her. and also this other awareness of maybe there's some other bigger things happening. So another one said, talked about having very negative feelings when thinking about diabetes. And so after a number of times, Catherine would then get into talking to them about when you think about having diabetes, what do you think about? What does it mean? And one young woman said, well, there's days when I feel really sad because it's like, oh, why do I have this? And this is mid-teens. It's because of my parents and my family, and I'm overweight, which she's not. And so then they talked about, about their health. And well, you have to take care of yourself. What you eat and exercising are a part of health. Having support is important for health. And your state of mind is important. You can be healthy if you believe you can be healthy. But children are not as responsible for their health as adults. We're dependent on their parents. And that's one of the things that's coming through too, is that there's a fair bit of, they're being asked to take a lot of responsibility for their lives and their diseases when maybe they're only 13, 14, 15 years old.
It's the bulk of the responsibility.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's a, because of their situations, that's a heavy load. And I'll show you some of the other loads they have. And another one said, well, for young people, health is not on your priority list. It's near the bottom of the list. More important things are family and money. So lack of money makes it hard to eat healthy. One of the things that was talked about is that they talked about getting the same messages over and over again. And perhaps they're not giving us clues that they're understanding the message. But they're very frustrated being told the same things over and over again. So advice about eating really bugs me. If a parent can't afford to buy all that good stuff, they need to find alternatives for parents with lower incomes. They need to figure out ways to show families how to eat, like lower income, and what to do, and like based on that, and not expecting you tell us, and all of a sudden we're going to be eating like this portioned food. And that's one thing that really bugs me. So I think, what's important here, again, it's not kind of blaming people, and it's not that we shouldn't be giving the information, but I think we need to, to put a bigger understanding on before we're providing advice about lifestyles. And just in terms of this idea about responsibility, I was really struck by the level of responsibility that most of the participants have in their lives. So they're caring for family members and friends sometimes, and it's just an ever-present part of their lives. And so this young person who has responsibility in caring for younger sibs and wants to do well in school, wants to go to university, and gets stuck caring for kids at one parent's house and then has to try and take the bus to get to school. So, she said, I'm waiting and waiting. I get really mad because I really need to study. That's something that sticks with me. I know my education is more important than him sleeping or being hungover. And so again, this level of responsibility. Another one said, I want to get healthy for siblings to take care of them in case anything happens. And so a number of these, and most of you will know that a lot of these kids then have mothers who had diabetes, and as Heather showed you those statistics, people are dying young. So if you know them, their parents are very sick, and so at 10, 12, 14, they're taking large roles in their siblings' lives when they're not really equipped to take on those kinds of roles. And so Catherine talked about one of the things that keep them healthy too, but thinking about, so this person's just in her late teens, thinking about my younger siblings gives me energy. They're my babies. I want to give them the best, and it helps me work harder to get what they want from me. And so this is a common theme for the people that we're talking to too. That they talk a lot about what's happening in their lives and just all the types of things that they're responsible for. So another example, one young person talked about how when she was 8 or 10 at the hospital with, oh, okay, so yeah, maybe, yeah, about 12. And so her, visiting her mom who was on dialysis. So she also has diabetes. So she's in the hospital with, visiting her mom who's on dialysis, so sitting with her mom. And going, well, maybe that could be me. And a woman next door who's about the same age, in for dialysis, diabetes, suddenly arrests and falls off of her bed. The team comes in and code's called and they're trying to revive this person. And so here's this 12-year-old, and so the mom of the 12-year-old is freaking out because she doesn't want her daughter to see this, but this is a friend of hers, and there's no curtain. And so the team can't pull a curtain or get the child up fast enough while they're working on the neighbor, and the neighbor dies. And the mother is devastated, and the 12-year-old is trying to support her mother. And so, isn't an anomaly, and I think probably you who work with them know these types of things, but this isn't an anomaly, this is part of their lives, the trauma in their lives. And when I read these, I just try and think about my own family and think about, if, for all of us, if we had a 12-year-old, who had to experience that. And then we have a child who then says, well, it just becomes normal. So this is kind of their normal. And where they're sitting in terms of this anxiety and just the pain that's in them, it's just at a really high level because of these types of things. Things that someone like me would probably never see in my life. Some of you would see because you're clinicians. But some of us in the audience would never see somebody crash and the team come and try to revive them and somebody die in front of us. Some of us will never see that in our lives. This becomes normal. So then talking about their diabetes, someone said, well, there's acceptance but denial as well. And so Catherine, again, the skill that she has, talking to them about that, basically, I don't want to talk about it. And it's a blank. I never want to picture it. Change can't happen if nothing can be talked about. And this other young one says, I think about the complications. That's what I think about when I think about my diabetes and cries. And another one says, well, it's scary because I think, well, what happens if I don't survive? It's nonstop, constantly thinking about that. So 14, considering her mortality. I don't consider my own mortality yet, so just being careful what I eat and that, and then I'm going to be careful about this because this would happen and this would happen and so on. So we kind of get this whole picture. And this is again another young girl who said, when asked about how did having diabetes change your life? Where did your life before? Well, I sort of knew diabetes when I was younger because I was seeing my mom and my aunties. My grandma had diabetes and banged into a sharp thing and then didn't heal and just went all black and gross. And they said they'd have to amputate it. And then, so that happened. And next thing you know, the other one, same thing happened and they had to cut that one off. And then this young woman,
And that's told in just like a whole series. And then she talks about school, and then she talks about this, and then she talks about just like a very normal part. That's what anyone would talk about in a conversation.
that's right. And then to the point of saying, well, it's normal to have somebody in my family die once a month. But then Catherine is able to bring out what happens as a result of that and the anger and the negative effects of anger. So the alcohol use in the family, the physical violence that happens, as a result of this. So I said things that we've heard before, but Catherine's been able to get this depth and these connections so that we can kind of put all of this together. So maybe, I'll probably take it too much.
So this is a young girl that I met for the first time, and we decided to do kind of a getting to know you sort of session. And we talked about maybe doing some getting to know you kind of drawing. So like a self-portrait, a personal symbol, your animal totem, those kinds of things. I didn't realize when this is the first drawing she ever drew, a portrait of herself, how incredibly important the detail in the hair and the open mouth was until she started talking about her life and her story. And that came out in this drawing, which is a bastardization of an exquisite corpse sort of technique drawing where you start and pass it to someone and they do another part, and then you pass it to someone else and they do another part. But this was just a paper folded into 3 parts, and she drew her personal symbol, and then I asked her what's underneath. And she drew a little burrow with a little kind of animal family, and then scratched it out. And I said, oh, what's underneath that? And then she drew 3 little dens, 2 scratched out, and 1 not. As she was doing these drawings, and as we were talking, she was telling me about her family, her life, her experience of living in foster care. She was in 3 foster homes from the time she was 7 to her permanent placement now. I think she's in her 13. From 13 to 16, she's had 5 CFS workers. And she's finally in a place where she's safe enough to sort of start addressing some of her concerns. When she was in CFS care, they did a naming ceremony and I think like a sweat as part of, I don't know if it was a camp or part of the process, before kids are in foster care. But they gave her a spirit name, and her name was Shiny White Turtle. And turtle in First Nations culture means truth. And her open mouth was about her speaking her truth, because she was the one who told about the physical and emotional abuse in the family. She was the reason that she and her siblings were removed from home. And just things like that coming up. This is another drawing with another participant. These are kind of like psychic landscapes. And so I asked her if she could draw her secret place she goes to when she wants to be alone. And I don't think we need PhDs to realize she's a little depressed and her space is very small compared to a lot of other kids that drew these enormous spaces or talked about these enormous landscapes. You could turn this way and it was dark, you could turn this way and it was bright. Hers is very small. Has a fence around it, 1 tree, and a path that goes nowhere. And it's right. This is the same assignment with another participant. So part of the session is a lot of it being fun, it's a little bit of a challenge, it's a little bit of getting them to decide what they want to do. So you hold up a bunch of colors, and I've pre-assigned the color themes and assignments for drawing, so they choose what color they want, and then they get the topic that goes down with that. So it's a bit of a challenge. And then they have to learn about color theory to learn where the colors balance on the color wheel and what units of distance to make that, or color temperature, or things like that. So this girl chose blue and red, but she chose to do the blue assignment. And one of the themes that really comes out as well, to me overwhelmingly, and we just can't talk about all of this, is that you have a really strong pull to know about traditional culture and themselves, and to be able to live their lives in a way that would honor their ancestors. That they have, and she said she has a thirst to know about these things. So she's not sure. The girl's kind of looking into the past. She's not really sure she's welcome there, but it's a place she'd love to go to. And when you hear her talking about this and talking about the sounds and the smells and was an example for some of the kids that didn't want to necessarily draw, but were really interested in words and language and writing. This was an assignment, picking 3 colors, assigning an emotion to them, making a big list of everything you thought of when you thought about that emotion, coming up with an idea for which topic you wanted to pick, and then making it home. So it's like a list. But we also use Pro-Quil ink pens to slow them down, to make it permanent, to make those words powerful. And this young girl picked unsure. And this is her. Can you guys read it or not? Life can be unsure, it may be stressful, life is unpredictable. Life is a battle, you've got to do your best, you've got to try your best. Life is tricky. Life is hard, you get feeling of lost, mixed feelings, questioning a lot, unclear, etc. Life is indescribable. If you are a person who gets stressed out, you will want to. Don't, it's not healthy. Life is challenging. Food and weight it's a huge issue. Life is what makes mystery, doesn't make sense, low self-esteem, but it is okay. Life is unsure, but we all have to do it. It's life. And this is another example of another kind of word playing assignment, where depending on what came out in the interviews, I would pick a topic I wanted to hear more about, have them pick a color, write the word down, and then it was bang, 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 bang. First thing you think of when you think of that, first thing you think of when you think of that, first thing you think of when you think of that, until the answers circle back to the first word again. So this one was school. This one was really personal, and it started with her mother, and it ended with sickness. And she won't talk about it. Basically from, I guess, my take-home message with working with the art and the themes is that in order to motivate these kids for self-care, you really have to know what their level of self-worth is, how they feel about themselves, plus the level of their soul wounds and how much support is required. So this young girl, these are the stories of the themes of her life. This is her psychic art landscape. These are all the arts she's met along the way that have helped her. Yeah, my heart's
Yeah,
like
Catherine. Oh, so this, so far, these are some of the main key findings and themes that are coming. So certainly responsibility, oops. If you could, won't touch it. Oh, there we go, okay, we'll touch it. So feeling overwhelmed, and these are the issues that they're certainly talking about and drawing about as well. But the things that we haven't really brought into yet is just how misunderstood that they feel in clinics and at the medical system, with the medical system in general. I think anything to do with their health, feel misunderstood and they feel talked down to. I think one of the major things as well is that they're just living lives that are so difficult. And they don't feel that they're, I think that they're experiencing things that probably some of us have never experienced. And then to be talked to at such a lower level than they're actually living, they find really difficult and insulting. So it leads to this shutdown and then another misinterpretation. So this is kind of where we are now, the kind of the past.
Just
thing. Yeah, just
analysis of the
yeah. Yeah. So I guess so what our taking from Paul Farmer, who is a physician, anthropologist, who works with underserved populations and HIV, but talks about challenges, and any time that he encounters a structural barrier to trying to affect change, says that's what we should consider a starting point of the conversation. conversation. It's not the end point. So if you tell me, no, this can't be done, that's a starting point for me to say, okay, how are we going to get this done? That's what Paul. So I think that what we have here is really the early beginnings of a starting point for a conversation, which can hopefully progress to intervention and change. So our next steps are really to continue this analysis of all of this rich material, so much that Catherine has brought to us. Interpretation is going to be not only with people, here in the room, but the youth and other youth, and broader communities. And I guess I would exercise a bit of caution in terms of the application of the visual arts method. It's a means of communication, and the way Catherine is using it, and it's not being used, nor is it to be used as a diagnosis of pathology or as a tool for healing. And that's, Catherine's not doing that. Yeah, it can be used, but just in terms of this project, yeah, Catherine wanted us to make clear that's not what, that's not her purpose or what she's doing. So basically, don't to do that. That's what you wanted to say. But it really is. It is really very powerful. But you need to have that connection for these things to come out. And I think that Catherine just talked about the respect, and I think from the researcher world, Michael Patton gave us some important advice that our scientific observation, no matter what they are, if it's a data point in a spreadsheet, a clinical finding, or something like this, people's very personal lives, represent some person's real life experience, and respect for the latter must precede respect for the former. So, and I think that's the way you all are, world known for having such strong and respectful relationships with families and children. So I know you put their lives before the data. Just all of these people who supported. Thank you, Catherine.
Well, that was a very powerful start to a research round. I'm sure if we this could lead to a very powerful and long discussion, but maybe we could entertain one or two. I know we're a little over time, but why don't we entertain one or two questions, and then obviously an ongoing conversation with any of the three of them. I'm sure they'd love to have coffee with you or to explore or talk about this more. So, yes?
It's probably a very naive question, but I have northern communities, and I wonder whether mostly what languages spoken.
I don't know the percentages, but I know from my own experience that Ojibwe, like in communities that we work with, is spoken a lot. Most of the kids do speak it. And speak it with their friends and family. They both speak English.
That probably also leads to isolation from.
Yeah. One of the interviews I was doing with the youth, they were trying to tell me a story, and they went, "Oh, it's only funny in Ojibwe."
You don't speak them?
I don't speak that.
Yes.
Something to learn.
Do the kids know that you're sharing these stories with us?
Absolutely.
And what is their take on that?
I mean, every session is reported with their permission. They know that. They know, like I physically photograph their work right in front of them. So they absolutely know. They know they're going to be completely protected. And no one will know who's in this.
So you also let them know that, a group of people gain, a measure of insight and
Absolutely.
and all the positive vibes that we don't have time to all share with you, Catherine.
Yeah, absolutely. And they definitely know that every time they come in.
And I think that they've asked, they want their,
Mhm.
they want
Yeah.
certainly their art
Yeah.
to be shown and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
how they
exactly.
talk about it.
And then sometimes you kind of re-explain why you're asking these really personal questions, right? It's so we can learn, so we can make our communications better. So they absolutely know. That's great.
I was just going to say, on a really positive note, I think what it does is it helps us to understand how traditional medical systems are inadequate to really help work with some of the challenges that we have in a space where children can express themselves in different ways. is a totally outside the box way for us to think about how we provide care. And also just inspires us to want to be able to read. I did bring show and tell some of the books that made a difference in my life, although I have a very large library, and I think the more we read, the more we listen. And the Canadian Pediatric Society has a very, very good module for teaching residents about cultural sensitivity, cultural safety. And I think it's really important that we all push ourselves to learn, and I think Catherine's work helps us very much in the clinic to see it from a totally different
But not to
framework.
be actually afraid to just talk to people as a people, like get beyond that, oh, I have to be so culturally sensitive, just talk to that person.
The other difference is the tension between, as Brenda Elias says, the tension between the way we have to do things, because that's expected of our professions and our systems, versus the way of that really should be done, and how do we make those things happen, but we have to. How do we set aside some of the, that we have to get this blood work done, and we have to do the blood pressure, and we have to do this, and we have to do that in a very busy clinic, to actually being able to sit back and listen is a very difficult tension.
Well, we look forward to how you resolve that tension.